Okay, so yeah, this webinar is mobile development for VCL developers. We're going to be going through over the next hour. This is live, very much live. We're going to be using live Q&A through Pavel is online with me. This is Stephen Ball. I'm going to be your host today as we go through. And if you need to reach me, then you can on my email, stephen.ball@embarcadero.com, or you can pop along to my blog, or just hook up with me on Twitter as well, at delphiaball, delphiaball.co.uk. So today's session, we're very much going to be running through RAD multi-device development, looking at some of the really cool things that we have within RAD Studio to help us along the way, how the platforms are architectured, how they're put together, looking at this very much from a VCL developer's view. So if you've been using RAD Studio for the last few decades, then you know basically how to do VCL development. But there's a number of things that are slightly different, I think slightly better in the FireMonkey framework. And we're going to be having a look at how the different things kind of work, some tips and tricks around usability, setup, how to deal with multi-device devices with different screen orientations, and all that kind of stuff. So please do go ahead and add any questions into the Q&A log as we're going along. My mouse just got a little bit sensitive. Okay, so first off, just a little bit. We're going to spend no more than about 4 or 5 minutes in slides just to kind of set some context, really. And then we're going to get straight into the IDE and have a play. So mobile development, very much, with mobile, there's so many different types of devices out there, so many different types of screen orientations. There's billions of devices out there. It's growing at a much faster rate than well, it's way past now what the desktop screens out there are, and it just keeps on growing. And that's a great opportunity for us as developers to be able to extend our existing applications with the core functionality out. Tip number 1 for today: don't think you need to move your entire application out to mobile. Just think of the things that are going to add time and efficiency benefits to the end user, and look at adding just those small bits. It may just be some data entry where you need to kind of capture something with a camera, or you need to be out and around. It might be that an example from the past that I've had was a health club management system, which was being used in soft play centres, and we used to have queues out the door on wet days. One of the things they had to do from a legislative point was register people as they were coming through to track parents and children to make sure people are leaving with the right kids. And that registration process took a while at the tills. So putting something onto mobile there for people to go down the queue and get people pre-registered, so when they got to the front, entrance was so much quicker. That's about kind of taking a small chunk of what you can do and adding a huge amount of value back onto your VCL applications. So apps remain the preferred mobile technology choice. Building things natively on devices provides you so much richer functionality that you can get using HTML and other scripting kind of languages. And the FireMonkey platform today is offering exceptionally strong single source, multi-device capabilities. Now, I've had a look through a number of the other kind of things around the market for doing mobile development across multiple platforms, and there's so many limitations if it's around the language and the structure of what you can use on different platforms. Nothing gets close to the single code base that we offer, and especially when you type that in with the the leading edge offering around what Fire UI does. It's very, very, very cool. So in the project manager, you'll see your project group, and you have kind of your multi-device apps. This is the project name. We've got the release and debug builds, which you've obviously seen around for a while. Key thing is when you're testing, the debug build will allow you to have the ability to debug. It does massively increase the size of the binary. So make sure that you always do put it into release build before you kind of share things around. The target platforms. Target platforms, obviously, we've been used to having Win32, Win64. The mobile platforms are just an extension of this. The one thing that is different under the mobile platforms is as you get into them, not only do you have the devices that are connected up to the machine available, and that can also be simulator as well as the physical device for iOS, but you also have configurations which are kind of slightly different to the build configurations. These configurations are again just, this standard debug build, which is not having to put any credentials in for going out into app stores. It's just using a local provisioning profile for iOS. For the App Store and for ad hoc, you do need additional provisioning profiles. So my mouse is going mental. You do need additional provisioning profiles, and that's probably the one bit that takes a little bit of time just to configure out and sort out. But once it's done, and you don't need to worry about it again. So that is a small thing to be conscious of, but really quite simple once you've got it set up. And the documentation is really, really strong in DocWiki for all of these steps. It's probably 20 minutes work to go through the first time, but then as I say, it's done. Now with FireMonkey architecture, as I say, it's very much based on strong object-oriented architecture. So the great thing for us as developers is we build with components and classes, and we code to interfaces. Those interfaces and those components working together then map to the correct stuff over the different platforms. So for example, if you want to reach to the camera, you use the component that talks to the camera. The object-oriented design underneath is then making sure that on iOS it's talking to the iOS camera, on Android it's talking to the Android camera, and so on. And that's all managed through a strong set of interfaces. Exceptionally strong OOP architecture, which makes development for us very, very easy because we can literally write it once and it'll just get out there. Now, in terms of building UIs, we're going to have a look as we go through at the multi-device designer. And that's where we're going to very much start off today. There's a number of differences and a lot of similarities between designing a FireMonkey application and a VCL one. So we still have T-button, we still have T-edit, we still have T-list view, we still have T-label. A lot of the components that you're used to are very much the same. There are a few minor things that are different, and a few things that are really ramped up and improved in a massive way to allow us to work with such varying screen sizes. So we'll have a look at those bits, and I think that's probably a really good place to actually get out of our slides and just get straight into the UI. Okay, so first of all, I'm just going to open up a new multi-device application project. And this is in the latest 10.1 Berlin IDE. So let's just open up a blank application. And here we are, we're starting off with T-form. If we have a look at the code behind here, this is looking very, very similar to a VCL application. In fact, let's just go ahead and we'll add a new project into here, and we'll go and add a VCL application. So we can see, it's T-form. They're both T-forms, both using sysutils system types. These are kind of common units. The only difference here on the Windows one, we've got WinAPI units, whereas on the FireMonkey one, we've got some FMX units. That's the basic difference, which allows a lot of this to kind of be mapped through in such a nice way for us. So slight difference in the units, but beyond that, let's just jump into the FireMonkey one now. We'll just remove that project, no need for that. So I'm just going to put down a button, let's just put down a label, and we'll pop down an edit control as well. And these are going to form the basis of our start point today. So hopefully none of this is going to be rocket science to you guys. So we can still see on our structure that we've got our controls here. And one of the things that is slightly different here, I can actually parent the label just by dragging it onto the edit control here. And it now becomes relative to the edit control. So I can go position it at the top. Now everywhere this goes, it goes with it. Now that's a little bit like having a T-labeled edit in the VCL. Here you just have the two working together. Initial differences, well, it's a T-edit. It's got a text property. The label, rather than having a caption, also has a text property. And the key thing with the controls is things have been normalized within the FireMonkey framework as it's been built. And part of that is to allow and help developers with things like generics and writing code that kind of works a lot more similarly across different things. It also helps out with kind of a lot of style elements that kind of are part of a big part of FireMonkey. So we're just going to do a pretty obvious thing here, and let's just go ahead and let's just update the label with the text from the edit control. So label1.text equals edit1.text. Okay, so we can test this now quickly on Windows. And that's working absolutely fine. And what we can do now is I've got plugged in, I've got my Android device. So I'm going to go ahead, let's just go save all of this out. Just save it anywhere for the moment. I'm going to go ahead and now build this for Android. Now, what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to jump back to my Mac and make sure that I've got Reflector open, which I have. Good. Now, Reflector is a program that allows me to share my screen from my Android device directly onto my Mac here. So I'm just going to go ahead and get this casting. I'm just going to run this out onto my Android device directly from the IDE. And we can see here, this is just now packaging it and signing it. Now what this does, this is actually compiling the application. It's now setting it up and passing it out to the Android debugger to get it across onto the device. Installing it onto the device, and then once it's out there, it will then go ahead and run it. So I can now see my my application. So let's just get my screen to wake up, and you can see as I'm kind of working in here, that's now kind of working. It's not looking great yet though, so that's something we do need to come and have a look at. So that's kind of important. This is one of the things that kind of happens when you're building mobile applications. Sometimes it can look like you're going really slow if you happen to jump back and forth between devices. Well, thankfully, RAD Studio has an awesome answer for that, and it's called the Multi-Device Designer. So if we just go over to this tab, now you can run this out, undock it, put it onto a separate screen. You can say which devices you want to have listed in here, which is great. Let's just minimize that down for a moment. So with the view here, we can say, well, actually, let's just get rid of the iPad for the moment. Just take those two mobiles. If we go back to the design, we can say, well, actually, this doesn't look great. So let's maybe align this to the top. Okay, well, our label's now disappeared off the top, and we can see that here, but we can also see that that's kind of fitting in okay over there. So one of the key properties that you can look at are padding and margins. So if we pad this with 20 at the top, that's not doing anything. The padding is actually for internal kind of sizing. So we're going to use the margins. And we can now see that that's pulling it back down. We're beginning to see the labels looking just about in the right place. Okay, so what would also kind of look good now is actually to put, just looking at the layout, is to put in maybe a toolbar at the top. Now, putting the toolbar in, I've got it automatically aligned to the top, but my controls are aligned to top as well. Now, if you're moving controls around, you sometimes want things to always be at the most top. Well, that's one of the different things that we have now in the alignments, is we can actually choose a whole set of different alignment options. So I'm going to set this to most to top, and that will then go above. So most top goes first, then top, and then obviously you can rearrange things within that alignment area. But just to make this look a little bit better, let's go ahead and pop a label in. And with the alignment here, we want to align this into the top area here. So I could align it to client. Okay, if I align it to client, it's going to go into the full space. Let's go ahead now and just set this to be centered. And we'll just call this my cool app. Now, one of the things here is that over different platforms, there's different styles that are provided to labels when they're appearing at the top. Now, rather than having to do something that is, a best we can sort out for most platforms, FineMonkey uses this concept of styles. And you can see this really much in place at the moment. So we've got the edit control here, but the edit control looks very much different on Android. So what we're actually going to do is we're actually going to say, well, this label here, we're going to define as a toolbar label. Now, if you spot, it's now gone bold on these platforms over here. That's a very specific toolbar label attribute or style on the different platforms. So just by using the style lookup, you're able to actually start making the UI look correct and manage itself across the different platforms. This label here, I'm just going to make a bit bigger. Now, the button at the moment is kind of looking reasonably centrally here. It's a bit to the right here. It doesn't look quite right. So again, there's a whole host of different options for horizontals, vertical, horizontal center, vertical center, and so on. So you can kind of play around with these different options. The other one that you can do is you can just say, right, just align it to the center. And that will just align it to the center of the screen, to the space that's available. So there's a lot of different options. One of the other things that you can do is sometimes in VCL you'd be putting down a panel and putting things into a panel and laying them out. You can do similar kind of things here. So we can use a layout, and there's a number of different layouts. There's a layout, a scaled layout. Scaled layout, basically you put your controls in and then you can tell it to automatically scale up and down, and it will maintain the aspect ratio of things. There's a grid layout that allows you to align a number of controls in a grid format. That's very, very useful if you're kind of wanting to do a grid of components where you're wanting to start parenting things inside others and making some, building something up quite nicely. You can use that with frames and so on as well. There's a flow layout and a flow layout break. Flow layout basically allows you to put controls down one after another. It's a bit like typing them out into a single line of text and then having them word wrap around and have that automatically word wrap. It's that kind of concept, which is quite useful. So I'm just going to pop down a layout here. I'm going to go align this to the top. And I'm going to say I want it that kind of big. And now let's go ahead and put the button into the layout. And it's now going to appear in the middle of that section just there. So pretty straightforward and easy to do. So let's go ahead and just update the text on this to do it. And I'm just going to jump back to my default layout. I'm just going to run that locally here on Windows just to start off. Let's try that again. Why can't it create the output? Oh, I've still got it open. That'll be why. Okay, so that's kind of working. It looks a bit funny up against the sides, so easiest way to do that. Let's come back, and we're going to put the margin on, just maybe 5 on the left, 5 on the right. Now, one thing you can notice there is because we parented the label onto the edit control, it's now maintained that alignment as well. So another really useful tip around setting things up. Okay. Now, I want to get this out onto iOS, so I'm just going to go ahead and have a look here. I haven't really kind of got much set up on my simulator here at the moment. That'd be because I haven't got my PA server running. Now, PA server is a program that run on the Mac side, so I'm going to jump back to my Mac, and I'm just going to open up PA server. And if I now come back, I can refresh my targets. And I should get a nice long list of targets up here. Okay. So I know what that is. Okay. I've changed my IP address just before so I could show you something else with the live preview. And in fact, let's just do that and then I can change that back really, really quick in another way. So one of the other things I've got here is I've got my iPad. Let's just go ahead and get that mirroring here. So here's my iPad. Now, there's one of the really nice, cool applications that's now available is the live preview. And what live preview allows you to do is broadcast from the IDE. And there you can see it's found it. And now we can see here on my iPad a live preview of what's going on here. So if I go ahead and let's change this to this is live. And now come back here, you can see this is updated automatically. So that's a really nice ability to have screens working out onto different devices. And you can see here I can play around with the orientation. I see there's a question from Antonio about the orientation side of things. Using the live preview with a real device connected up, you can actually play and see as you're building how the form's going to lay out as you're going. One of the other options with regards to the preview of what you're designing, because that really is one of the things that can take a little bit of time, is so far we've been building a master. Now the master is kind of the base point. Now if you think a little bit like form inheritance, form inheritance allows you to take a form and then create a new version of it, which you can then do different stuff on it. Well, this is similar, but not quite the same. So here, I'm actually going to go ahead and create an iPad-specific version. And here I can go ahead and maybe let's just change the font color here to red. Okay. Now, when I run out onto my iPad, that will be what's seen. If I go back and have a look at the master, then that's not the option that's there. The other thing that's quite cool here is I can actually come into the events and I can actually create, I could create a different event. So I'm just going to go create an on iPad click event. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and copy this and put in here just iPad and the text. So what this is doing is it's actually allowing us to change functionality depending on the device. Now that's quite useful. What you do need to be aware of, this is actually, all the code is in the same form though. It's not a complete split here. The only split is the visual part. So what you end up with additional resources, and as you save it out, you'll find there's an iPad FMX iOS resource created, and that gives you basically, it's a differential between the main and the current form. So if we go ahead back to the master and go ahead and put something in here, so let's go ahead and change my cool app at the top here. Let's go ahead and put an exclamation mark in there as well. If we come back onto the iPad, you can see that's been brought down. But if we made a change onto the label, because we've made the change on this here, that's not going to reflect through. We can always revert to inherited low. Right click and revert to inherited. That will take it back to what the master is, and then you can make any specific changes again that you want. So that is something that's kind of pretty cool. Now, when you have made a specific template, what you can do is you can then go and rotate it. And if you go and have a look at the multi-device designer now, and if we go and add the iPad back in, we can now see we can preview that in landscape mode, and here we can see the live preview of how it's looking different because of the differences on the specific template for that platform. Okay. Okay, so there's a few bits. The last thing that I just kind of want to point out really around the controls is that there's a number of different things when it comes to working with devices that have touch screens that are kind of important for usability. You can actually change quite often what appears when you're entering controls. So a really good example of that is with the edit control. Now the edit control itself has two options that are kind of important. The first one is this control type. Now styled is the default control, and in fact what I'm going to do is I'm going to put down two controls. Let's just go back to the master and do that here. I'm going to have two controls here. The top one, we're going to go and put a really nice text prompt in. So we'll just put in here, enter name, and the second one we're going to put in, enter email. Now the difference here is that I'm going to make the second one have a keyboard. Where is it? A keyboard type of email address. And if we put a third one in, and here we can put in maybe phone number. And again, here we can go ahead and change the keyboard type to a number pad or a phone pad. There's also a URL one, which is good for putting URLs in. So let's put phone pad there. So if we go ahead now, I'm going to run this out onto my Android device. And I'm just going to run this without debugging. And once it's out onto there, I'm also going to run it out onto my iPad, and we're going to have a look at the reflection for those. And the great thing here is basically by just setting up those properties, that's just getting out onto my device now, so let's just go ahead and my iPad is plugged in, so let's go try and get that to run. Of course I need to change the IP address back. Let me just set my network bridge. Actually, I better not, because I hope that might disconnect my internet connection. Oh no, it's only on the VM, that's okay. So, okay, there's my iPad, great. If you ever need to work out what IP address your PA server is running on, just go into it, type I, and you can see the IP addresses pop up. I could have just gone into the IDE and changed the setting, but it's that's just as easy for this. I know the ports are all set and okay on that IP address locally, so. So here my iPad's just opening up and sharing. And here we can see, okay, I need to sort out the sizing around my labels still. Part of the good reason to do the live preview. If I click onto the name, I've got a normal keyboard. If I select the email one now, you can see we've now got the @ sign next to the space. If I just go away, you can see that's changing. And if I click onto the phone number one, you can see it's bringing up the phone number keypad straight away. So this is great usability, just adds a little bit of speed improvement to your applications. Let's make sure this is run out. Okay, I have just got that. So here we can see that the red label on the iPad one has been updated. That's showing here. If I click into the different controls, you can see the keyboards are changing automatically as well. So great kind of usability. Okay, so just a quick look at a couple of questions that popped in here. So yeah, Al was asking a question around about the visualization of the like using the master and the template template views here. Basically, yeah, if you're going ahead and changing things in the template, you just need to be aware that they're not going to be iterated back up to the master. So it is good practice just to design as you can in the master, make things work. So for example, we've just seen that we need some more space for the label really on Android. So let's just go ahead and, yeah, you go ahead and just kind of adjust those in here, maybe give them a little bit more kind of spacing above them, and so on. So yeah, that's certainly something that I would look at. So the question about do I work on a virtual platform on Mac? So we run a Mac. I'm running a Mac here, which then has Windows running inside it, and I'm then able to remotely debug and run my applications for Mac and iOS through PA Server. So this is just a network bridge. This is the same that you can actually use. There's a Windows installer for this as well, so you can install and run and remote debug against remote Windows machines, which is great for debugging and playing with things, which is kind of cool. Okay, there's a question about BiDi mode. Now, the other thing that I did mention here is that there's, on a number of the controls, which is particularly around iOS, you can switch between platform and native. Now, everything we've set up so far will run out to these controls now. In fact, let's just go ahead and leave the first one here as a styled control. And let's rerun this back out onto my iPad. So the great thing is, because the styles that are used within FireMonkey are pixel perfect representations, they're basically bitmaps of the real controls. It's very hard to tell the difference between them. So BiDi stuff is still being worked on, but there's the ability to put native controls in, which may pick up some of it. So let me just, my iPad's disconnected again. So here it's very hard to tell the difference. But if we go ahead and select all, so now here we've got cut, copy, paste, replace, define, share. If we do something on the top one, which is still the style control, can you tell the difference yet? So you've only got cut, copy, paste. Whereas here you've got cut, copy, paste, and you've got a few additional things that have been added by the OS as additional options that you can do. So the core competencies are exactly the same. It looks the same. It's exceptionally hard to tell the difference between them. But there are some things that the OS can pick up and do. Okay. Right. Let's move on. Now we kind of mentioned a little bit about the controls. That actually brings me back nicely to the slides for a moment. We've had a look at the on-device preview, which is kind of cool. And here's what we're talking about in terms of the platform rendering. So basically what happens is you have the control, and that control then has an option for control type of style or platform. The control type platform will provide obviously the platform version of it. That's what we've just seen with the edit control. That's also there for memos and labels, and the web browser by its very nature is a platform control. However, not all controls have a platform version of them. So if that's not there and you choose platform, it will render the styled one. So at least the application will run, it will give you the core functionality. Now there are some downsides of switching to the platform version compared to the styled version. It's not all upside. When you're using the styled version, one of the great things that you can use FireMonkey for is, again, kind of just some really kind of nice usability stuff. So let's go ahead and use maybe a glow effect, and put a glow effect onto the edit control here. So what we can do is you can actually say, well, let's make this red, and you can kind of change some of the properties about it. Here it's just enabled, but what you can do is you could put something in here. If edit one dot, well, actually, just easier, do it in a single line of code. Glow effect one dot enabled equals edit one dot text equals that. We can use some of the helpers as well, just to kind of trim that text. In fact, let's just run that locally on Windows, just for the sake of the demo. So you can see that that's really kind of come up now, and we've put something into there. It's now going to take that out of the way. So yeah, that's that's a really nice thing. But putting the same kind of thing onto onto a platform control won't be available if you're using the native controls. Okay, so let's get back to where we were. Now we've spoken a little bit about layouts as well, which is kind of cool. Kind of got those covered. Okay, one of the other things I wanted to kind of get into is actually having a look and show you through the getting data onto the screen, because so far we've done a lot of stuff without really getting any data onto here. So I'm going to actually just kind of close this, and we're going to build a new application very, very quickly, just using some different controls. First control I'm going to use is a tab control. Now, the tab control is a really good example of where platform services are added in. So I'm just going to add in a few tabs here. Let's go and align this to client. Now we can see here how it's going to look with the tabs at the top. If we go have a look at maybe an iPad, well, where is everything? Well, that's because the tabs are at the bottom. Platform services defined tabs appear at the bottom on an iPad, on iOS. In fact, it might be easier to do it just with a kind of an iPhone, a little bit smaller on the screen. And also on Android, if we choose Android, the Android default is for tabs at the top. So again, depending on the platform, the tabs are automatically put in the right places using the default platform services. Now, you can define and manage that. If you have a look at things like the tab position, it's got platform default at the moment. You can force it to always be top, bottom, dots, or none. That's really up to you. But the great thing having the platform defaults is that you can just have it feeling and looking right, which adds just to the usability on the different platforms. So I'm actually going to get rid of the third tab and just work with two here. So the first tab we're going to put in here a list view. Now, a list view is a really, really fast control. And at the top, I'm just going to put in a toolbar. So the great thing about the list view is that it's very, very quick at loading stuff in. It allows you to define a layout for a specific item and then to have them all listed in. If you're going to be using something that's more like the settings page on iOS, where you have lots of different switches or different things in each row item, then the list box is great, especially if it's static. You can just set those and define those up and pop it in once. The list view is much better for long scrollable lists. So if you're putting in lists of people or products or anything else like that, that is dynamically generating and is pretty much the same layout for every single one, then the list view is the way to go. And you can customize the list view appearance in here. You can also toggle design mode and come in and start playing around with how the list view headers and footers and the items are done. And there's a blog post on that if you want to have a look into that as well. So again, just reminding of what we did before, let's just put the label on at the top. We're going to align this. Now, we aligned it to client earlier. I'm going to align this to contents. Now, there's a big difference between client and contents. And let me explain what that is. So it's still my call app. And let's just go ahead and get this in the center. Oh. Now, one thing I'm going to use a little bit later on in the app is a navigation button. And if I align this to the right, you can see now using contents, this is actually still aligned to the contents. It's aligned to the container. If I used align to client, you can see now it's shifted over to the left a little bit and the text is no longer central. So that is a really, really handy alignment just to be aware of. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the prototype bind source. Now, FireMonkey doesn't have any data-aware controls. I'll say that again. There are no data-aware controls on FireMonkey. So you're used to using the TDB edit, the TDB label for linking up to data sets. They do not exist. You can still hook up to data using a prototype bind source, or just by popping down a data set and then binding to that. That will generate the links in the background. Here I'm just going to go ahead and add some fields. Fields are going to help me just with a prototyping phase. Now I'm going to grab these three here. So I've got contacts, bitmap, name and title. Now what you can do is you can rename these. So name, I'm going to call this photo My name, I'm going to call full name, and job title. So you could name these to match the properties of your objects, and then later on you can actually link those straight in. If you're not familiar with live bindings, then have a look at the live bindings for VCL developers session that I did previously, and have a look at the replay for that. All of what you learned there is very, very relevant for the FireMonkey setup here. So I'm not going to repeat that here, but let's just go ahead and bind visually. I'm going to keep these in sync, and you can now see that we're getting some data, and we're just going to put the full name into the text. Okay, so if I go ahead and let's just toggle design mode here, one of the things that I can do is I can customize the item appearance here. So rather than using the list item, I'm going to use custom, and I'm going to add in some additional properties. Where has that gone? Let's just come out of design mode and see if it's okay. I'm lost where I was at with that. The answer once found will be blindingly obvious. So I've obviously put it. That's obviously just not selecting on the right thing. It's the item. Oh, sorry, dynamic appearance. There we are. So now, under the item, it helps you select the right one. Rather than laying them out in a custom mode, I actually want to add some additional bits in. So let's go and add additional text item in. And now if I go ahead into the design mode, you can see we've got the two items in here. So I'm going to align them in that way. That's good. But I just want to adjust the positioning of them here. And there's an offset of X and Y, so I'm just going to do, let's just do -10. No, let's do it that way. Let's just do -10 on the Y. And you can see that's now kind of separating them out, maybe -20 or -15. Okay, so now I'm getting those two bits kind of separated out. If I just come back out of here, I can now hook this up to the text and maybe put the job title underneath. So you can start building up your own control types, putting images and everything in there. That's all very, very possible. Quite honestly, most of the time you're just going to want to use the default items. So I'm actually just going to go use here a list image item with bottom detail. And detail text and 2 no longer exists, so let's just get that out of the way. And I can now go and hook the photo up to the bitmap, the job title up to the detail. And you see we've got them predefined. So you can go and build your own ones, but honestly, most of the time you're just going to use really what is in there. Okay, so navigation. We've got some data here. We can see how it's going to look. I want to move on to the detail tab, which is going to be the second tab. So a couple of ways to do that. Just using the list view item here. On item click, so on the item click, we can tell it to move to the next page here. So you've got the item if you need that. I'm just going to tell tab control 1 dot set active tab with transition, and I'm going to move it to the well-named tab 2. And now we can set a T-tab transition. So T-tab transition And we can either just make it appear or we can slide in and look pretty cool with it. The direction, when you're moving, it moves in order. So if you're moving from tab 1 to tab 2 to tab 3 in that order, a normal transitional move will slide it in from right to left. If you use reverse, then it will slide it from left to right. Okay, so tab item 2, there we go. So let's just go ahead and check this here on Windows. So here we've got some data. If I choose Paul Davis, okay, that's going to scroll through, but that's kind of working. The other thing, reason I put this button here, is using the action lists. Action lists are really, really useful within FireMonkey. There's a whole set of very, very cool actions that you can use. Here I've got standard actions, change tab actions. So I'm going to just put down a new standard action, and you can see that there's a whole host in here. So there's tab 1s for next, previous, change tab action, which then as properties you define which tab sheet it's connected up to, and you can use one of those. There's options here for sharing photos, taking pictures from the camera, working with the media player, a bit like using data, having live bindings connected, so you can iterate through the objects or the data. Okay, and so on. So these are great. I'm just going to use the let's just use the next tab action here, and just set this to that tab control, and the button here will just hook up to the tab action. And this tab action here, we can set the text property on it. What I can see. Okay, we'll just go ahead and set the button instead. Okay, so you get the idea. Now, the last thing that I'm going to show you here is very much around using the prototype bind source here to say, I'm just going to say everything here, to produce the controls in a much faster way. So before you kind of put down a control, you then have to go name it and connect it up. With the prototype bind source, and this is the same with, sorry, it's not with the prototype bind source, it's with the live bindings designer. If you have a data set, you'll be able to see the same thing in here if you're connecting up to a data set. If we go ahead now, and I'm just going to right click on photo, link it to a new control, and I'm going to link it to T-image control. I'm not going to worry about control label. I don't think that's really needed for this one. And I now have my control added. If I go to the first name and I go to link to new control, and you can see here it's saying, are you doing another image? So no, I'm just going to do T edit, and I am going to add a control label this time. And I'm going to do the same for the job title here. And here I'm just going to link to a new T-edit control rather than having to choose it from the list. Now, what's pretty cool is that if I close up the bits for there, let's just go ahead and select these and drag them onto the second tab. And the same for the image control. If we actually look at the name that's been given for these, this is image control photo. So it's actually named it according to the property, or the on the data set it would be according to the field name. Here I've got edit full name, I've got edit job title. So again, I'm now at the point that I'm able to start laying out using the multi-device designer to see how my view is going to, how it's going to look, and kind of aligning my controls around just to kind of get that all looking, you know, absolutely awesome. I can put my toolbar in, have my back button, using the same technique that we just used to kind of move forward and back. Okay, so I think we're pretty much at the top of the hour. Really, things that I'd say are worth kind of having a look through beyond here. And I hope that's given you kind of a good entry point into kind of getting going, especially with the user interface side of things. There's a whole set of tutorials linked into the IDE. If you go to the tutorials page, you can see here on how to set up your Mac environment, how to set up your Android environment. There's code snippets and links for the mobile samples, for using a database with IB Lite, using the share sheet functionality, using web browsers, using notifications. There's a whole set of things in there. The documentation in here will link you directly to DocWiki. The page for that here is docwiki.embarcadero.com, and I'll put that straight away into the chat there for you. Once you get in, there's the mobile tutorials, which again take you through the same kind of things. Look at calendar controls, the map controls. There's a whole host of controls using the list box and how that's different from the list view. There's a whole host of things to kind of follow on from here. So definitely do get in there and have a play around. Okay, so let's have a look at the questions and see what else we have just around here. Okay, so question from Sebastian. The list view, you can dynamically create, if you've got a number of different styles that you need to use on different list view items, the list view does support the ability to dynamically create and add items in rather than having them managed automatically for you. And that can be very, very useful for a long kind of scrolling list where you might need to do some slightly different things. That said, people are used to kind of, there's also kind of grid components and the list box if you've got a fixed number of controls that aren't dynamically changing. And I think that's the big difference is, the list view is about serving out a lot of data. The list box is not as fast at rendering because it's doing a lot of different things. It's meant for a different type of activity. That's kind of a slight difference. I know Pavel's been answering a lot of the questions already. He's saying apologies for not being very loud because he's having a problem with his microphone at the moment. So unfortunately he's not able to join us audibly. I think most of the questions seem to be answered now. Okay, yeah, there was a question about if you have a lot of components, being able to hide and show things. There's an option up here now for hiding non-visual components. So that's really kind of useful, especially when you're kind of laying things out, move things around, that you can hide those components out of the way and then come back and then you can find those quickly. The other thing is, I actually got quite used to not having them there and just using the structure pane and going directly into the structure pane now, especially now that the icons are in the structure pane to identify the different things. And I think I find that very, very useful, and especially with kind of the having the live bindings lists and stuff up here as well, being able to find those as well. It's kind of quite useful actually having them out of the way. So that's kind of a useful little tip as well. Okay, the final thing around deploying, obviously. Deploying really is beyond the scope of this initial webinar today. There's a number of sessions that have been done on the skill sprints and on code rage around that. So definitely search those on skill sprints, and also it's very, very well documented through DocWiki. Even I managed to kind of get my way straight through those to get the bits straight out to devices. Okay, I think we're pretty much there. Thank you so much, everybody, for your questions. Thank you, Pavel, for your time with the Q&A and helping out with that. I hope your microphone gets better soon and we're able to hear you next time. Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone, and happy coding, and we'll see you back soon. If you haven't seen, there is a Cool Apps webinar tomorrow, so do get onto the community and register up for that. I'm really, really looking forward to that session. It's going through a number of kind of cool apps. If you think you have a really cool app, then the competitions are still open. You know, we're regularly doing a monthly cool apps competition, so do get your app in. There's been some exceptionally good winners. I'm really looking forward to hearing some of the stories and the top tips from those guys tomorrow, so that would be a great session to follow on from. The other things that are worth mentioning at the moment, we are doing a pretty decent bonus pack right now. There's a couple of other offers around as well, with kind of the mobile add-on pack. The mobile add-on pack was due to be finishing tomorrow. If you're on this webinar, then we are extending that through. Basically, it means if you're buying professional and you're upgrading to professional on Berlin, then you'll be able to get the mobile add-on pack for free. So please do make sure you kind of get onto that. Next week, Pavel is going to be running a bonus pack webinar to talk about the bonus pack and the different components and the bits that are in there. I know a number of you have already got your hands onto those, so do come in here. It's really easy just to click here to redeem the offer online. So yeah, do go ahead and have a look at that. If you missed the code, the boot camp that was running last week, then unfortunately the chance to get the free starter edition on Berlin is now finished, but you still can get the content and get your hands on that content, so do go have a look at the replays for that. The other thing that's coming up, we have a great webinar that Marco Canto is going to be doing, talking about the exceptionally strong support that we have in Berlin already for Windows 10 Anniversary Edition, talking about some of the new things that Microsoft are looking to get out as well. So that is going to be an absolutely fantastic session that is already really, really well subscribed to, and you know, because of the sheer volume, we may be having to look to do an additional stream on that as well. So do get yourself onto that if you're not onto it already. If you need any help in terms of upgrading, then just get onto the website. If you go onto the buying options, the best thing to do is just contact your local partner. On there now, it will just show you directly who your local partners are, like Graham Adder for the UK and so on. So do get onto the website. Very, very easy to get in touch with the local people, or contact one of the local sales reps, and we'll be more than happy to spend some time with you to get you over that line. Okay, great. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care, happy coding, and look forward to seeing you next week.